Hi everyone and welcome to AltVR. AltVR is a non-gaming VR YouTube channel where we are covering alternative and experimental approaches to virtual reality. So for instance, we have used virtual reality in sensory deprivation tanks, we've created out-of-body experiences in VR, played ourselves in third person in real life using virtual reality and drones, and this summer I am creating a mind-controlled memory palace in virtual reality. Today though, we are going to talk about the Vive Pro 2. So what I'm going to do is have a short unboxing, you can skip that if you'd like, and I'm going to test the various Vive Pros against each other. So I'm going first to test the Vive Pro regular one with the Fresnel lenses, then with the Gear VR Mod, and then with the Vive Pro 2. So we're going to look at various metrics such as horizontal and vertical field of view, the amount of glare, the sweet spot, and so on. So I hope you like this, and we'll see how it turns out. It requires a VR-capable computer. No shit. I mean, it demands more than that, I think. So we can start with the link box. Not that it's that exciting, but they did include a new link box, and I think you have to use the new one, which I guess makes sense because the old one probably can't handle the same resolution. Looks entirely the same, although that button is black. I mean, which is basically all the changes they made to the headset as well, only colors, of course, except for the lenses and the resolution. We get the lens cloth, that's always nice. USB 3 cable, as well as mini DisplayPort to DisplayPort here. And also power adapter for that. So I'll just put that to the side. Oh, there's also these if you want to replace the internal headphones without it looking too stupid. You can put on one of these, which are also blue like the last one. And lastly, oh yeah, there's a mini DisplayPort to DisplayPort adapter as well. Now to what's actually interesting, the Vive Pro 2 itself. Looking forward to this. It was really late. UPS had it in town for a week and couldn't deliver it, or I suppose they handed it over to the locals. Alright, nothing really interesting in the box except the headset itself, but it's of course useful to keep this if you want to carry it around somewhat safely. So here we go. Yeah, I mean definitely looks like a combination of the OG Vive and the Vive Pro 2. Not that I've ever used these cameras before, really. Alright, so there she is. I mean, it looks good though, but I suppose yeah, it looks okay. For me, they could have gone completely black, to be honest. But it's fine. It just looks a bit sloppy. And inside here, I'm really excited to look at the lenses now. We can take off this cover. And there we see. Yeah, that's quite a lot wider. Quite a lot wider. Now, let me see here too myself. Huh. Yeah, that looks interesting. It's also interesting, and I'm really curious and a bit skeptical. You can see how flat and rectangular they are up there, and that's what I've been reading in other reviews too, that it's a decreased field of view vertically. So I'm interested to see whether that's noticeable or not, and to what extent. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to see that. You can also, of course, see that the Fresnel lenses I got in my Vive Pro 2. I've done the Gear VR Lens Mod, which of course is very different in terms of it having no of those Fresnel lines. And I'm very skeptical going to a headset that doesn't use glass after my Gear VR Lens Mod experience, because it's so incredibly bright. The cable here is the same as original. Looks like this, and goes into the link box. So we'll see how that works in a second. Alright, so what we're going to do is to compare 3 different Vive Pros. I got the OG Vive Pro here with Fresnel lenses, as you can see. And I have the Gear VR modded Vive Pro, which uses the glass lenses from the Gear VR, which results in much brighter colors and clarity without the sort of God rays that you get from the Fresnel lenses. You can see this one here. And of course, we have the new Vive Pro 2, which is also using the Fresnel lenses, but a new design, and also has a wider field of view. So the question, of course, is going to be, how is the upgrade going to be for people who are coming from the regular OG Vive Pro, either with the mod or without, in terms of field of view horizontally and vertically, as well as glare and God rays and so on from the various lens designs. So yeah, I'm excited to see how this turns out, and let's just get into it. Alright, I'm going to start with the regular Vive Pro, that means without the Gear VR lens mod, and I'm going into the TestHMD software to test various metrics. So let's go. Alright, so now I'm inside the TestHMD software, which is basically a virtual laboratory where you can test all kind of different metrics inside head-mounted displays. So I'm going to start with the glare test, basically because I've been hearing terrible reviews of the glare on the Vive Pro 2, so I'm now on the OG Vive Pro in order to be able to compare against the last generation. So already here, I mean, high contrast scenes, white on black. The glare is quite terrible. I mean, you can really see the Fresnel lenses, and like with these 4 dots, I can basically see a cross between them, which is the glare from the lenses. I can also see some slight chromatic aberration. So for the Vive Pro original one, I think it's terrible. I really don't hope it's that much worse on the Vive Pro 2, but we'll see. Alright, so moving on to test the field of view. Now we are separating between vertical field of view here and horizontal field of view, and this test works in the way that I increase the distance between these dots until I can no longer see them, and then reduce the distance until the point, or the last point at which I can see them. So for the OG Vive Pro, we get a vertical field of view of 104 degrees, and we are going to test the horizontal field of view. Now, this will be interesting because of the different lens design with the Vive Pro 2, so I'm using these as control measures to see how much you can gain or lose in terms of horizontal and vertical field of view by upgrading to the Vive Pro 2. So for the horizontal field of view here, we get 102 degrees with a VFOV of 104 and HFOV of 102. Now, I'm also going to test with a slimmer facepad, because a lot of people are saying that they get a really increased field of view in the Vive Pro 2 using a slim facepad, but people are also using this for the regular Vive Pro. So I'm going to see also how much you can gain with a 6mm facepad, which is what I'm using for the Vive Pro 1, but also for the Vive Pro 2 later. So you can see here that I get a vertical field of view of 106 degrees. And for the horizontal field of view, we're moving on to that now. We can see if we get an increased field of view there. So this is also related to, the distance to the lenses, right, in terms of these face pads. And depending on your face and so on, you may get different results. But we can see here that I got an increase of 2 degrees with using the slim facepad for the original Vive Pro, so that the end result was a VFOV of 106 and an HFOV of 104. Alright, so I'm just going to briefly show you some of the other tests that I'm doing. I'm not going to show this for each head-mounted display because it's meaningless to you. Everything looks the same, basically. But I'm using a Snellen test to see how close I need to stand with each head-mounted display to read the text here. And also using this for readability and glare issues to see how many lines I can see at a given meter. So I'll give the results for these tests in the end of the video when I compare the various metrics. Alright, quite a lot of glare there as expected, but we did also get to measure the horizontal and vertical field of view, the readability of the text, as well as the sweet spot. So it will be interesting to see how this is measuring up against the Gear VR Mod and the Vive Pro 2. Now though, I'm going to test what's been my daily driver for the past few years, the Gear VR Lens Mod Vive Pro, and after that we're going to test the Vive Pro 2. Alright, so I'm going to keep this brief. I'm not going to show you everything inside of the TestHMD software, but for the glare is virtually non-existent with the Gear VR Mod lens. It's really an amazing upgrade that I would recommend everyone to look into if you're owning the regular Vive Pro. Now, you get some barrel distortion effects there, which can be partially compensated for, but just read up on it, and yeah, that's a really, really great tip. For the horizontal and vertical field of view, I found them to be exactly the same as with the Fresnel lenses, which also speaks for that upgrade. But I'm going to show you the stats here on this slide so that we can compare it to the Vive Pro 2. Alright, so swapping out the Fresnel lenses with the Gear VR Mod lenses gave us the same field of view. We were able to read a little bit better from a distance. The sweet spot is so much bigger and the glare is virtually non-existent. There is no God rays, slight chromatic aberration, but that is really not that noticeable anymore because it's not being sort of magnified by all the glare. Now, things get interesting because we are going up a lot in resolution for the Vive Pro 2, but we're going back to the Fresnel lenses. So what is this going to mean, and how is the lens design that they are using here with sort of this increased field of view horizontally and decreased perhaps vertically going to turn out? So I'm interested to see what kind of field of view I'm getting here, and especially the glare in these tests in comparison with the two previous Vive Pros. So let's check it out. Alright, so how is the glare on the Vive Pro 2? Well, it's immediately noticeable that we're back to the Fresnel lenses here, so you get the same kind of terrible glare as with the Vive Pro 1, but I guess that's all that can be said about it. I don't find it to be worse than the Vive Pro 1 with the Fresnel lenses. Of course, it's much worse than the Gear VR Lens Mod. But yeah, I basically found these to be exactly the same. Now, this may be different for you if you have a different head shape than mine, and of course it's hard to compare in that regard, but I found them to be exactly the same. Alright, moving on to test the field of view. Now, as we've talked about, it seems from the lens design that there is a reduced field of view vertically here and an increased field of view horizontally. So we're now trying it out with the regular face pad that comes with the Vive Pro 2, and we're going to try with a 6mm face pad afterwards. So the vertical field that I'm ending up with here is 78 degrees. Now that is vastly reduced from the original Vive Pro 1. And yeah, it's unfortunately, of course, also noticeable. It really feels more boxy. But let's see with the horizontal field of view. You can also see that the images here on the screen are rendered quite differently. Yeah, it seems that the image that is being rendered out in the preview is also being quite increased. So the end result here is 104 degrees horizontally and 78 degrees vertically. So there is only an increase in horizontal field of view of 2 degrees going from the Vive Pro 1 with the regular face pad to the Vive Pro 2 with the regular face pad, but a vastly decreased vertical field of view. Now that is really disappointing, but we're going to check out because people are reporting that they are noticing the benefits with the Slim face pad, so we're testing that now. So with the Slim face pad on, I'm going to test these metrics again. I can already notice actually that the field of view is increased quite a bit, both vertically and horizontally, but it's nice to get the actual numbers here. So with the Vive Pro 2 regular facepad, I got 78 degrees, but now I'm up to 96 degrees. Now that is 18 degrees in difference in relation to only 2 degrees in difference with the Vive Pro 1 going from the regular to the Slim facepad. In terms of the horizontal field of view, which was 104 degrees on the Vive Pro 1, I got 114 degrees. Now it was somewhere in between 112 and 114. But this is a really, really huge upgrade. Now for the other tests, you can see the metrics in this next slide before we round it up. Alright, so to summarize, I brought a few notes here from my experiments, but I think that what we generally can say is that if you're using the regular facepad that comes with the Vive Pro 2, you don't really even get much of an increase in the horizontal field of view, which was supposed to be the game changer here. It's only a couple of degrees. What you do get is a reduction from 104 vertical field of view to 78 degrees field of view vertically. And that is really noticeable, unfortunately, because you get that boxy feel. You can see that it's very clearly cut off vertically. So that's unfortunate. However, this is something that is possible to change, luckily. So if you use this instead, this is a 7mm, I think, that I actually bought from my regular Vive back in the day. And we then get a vastly increased field of view vertically. We go all the way up to 96 degrees. And that is very much more livable because it reduces the boxy feel. And when it also gives you an increased horizontal resolution, field of view, up to 114 degrees. Arguably 112, it was a bit hard to see the difference there. But then it's very much livable, and it's really noticeable because that broad field of view I've not experienced before. Unfortunately, I haven't tried the Valve Index, so I couldn't compare that, but that really made this device much, much better in my opinion. But that's not all to it, right? Because we have the glare issue, and there is glare. What I did find out in my testing is that it's not worse than the regular Vive Pro 2 in terms of glare. The sweet spot is a little bit smaller in terms of the vertical, but I wasn't actually able to test the sweet spot using the Slim facepad, simply because I can't use the Slim facepad with my glasses. They've also sort of broke a bit, and you can get these kind of adapters for these are for my regular Vive Pro 2, and from VR Optician I see that they have now released theirs from the Vive Pro 2 as well. So I'm going to get those, but I'm also quite simply, based on this, I'm going to switch to contact lenses. Because I tried some old contacts I had laying around. I couldn't use them for sweet spot testing because they're not entirely my prescription, but I'm honestly going to switch to contact lenses to be able to have a better field of view in VR. So when that happens, we'll see if it's worth the upgrade, and maybe also the sweet spot gets better when you get closer to the lenses. But the sweet spot is a bit smaller vertically on the Vive Pro 2 relative to the Vive Pro. The glare for me was entirely the same in the original Vive Pro and the Vive Pro 2 using the Fresnel lenses. For those of you who are using the Vive Pro 2 with the Gear VR Mod, you will be disappointed because Fresnels suck, right? And I used the Gear VR Mod. I'm not entirely sure what headset I'll use in VR chat, in everyday applications and so on. I think that it will depend upon performance, because right now my graphics card can't really handle all the applications to utilize the resolution of the Vive Pro 2, and then I might as well use the Vive Pro with the Gear VR lenses so that I'll get the clarity and the sweet spot, which is amazing. There is really no glare and the sweet spot is super huge with the Gear VR Mod, so I mean, for a lot of people, making the upgrade to the Gear VR Mod will be much more important than switching to a Vive Pro 2. That being said, there are a lot of applications in which the glare issue is not that important when you don't have these high contrast scenes. So if I'm in a museum, for instance, and there are brightly lit paintings, then I'm definitely going to use the Vive Pro 2 because, I mean, the colors are great, the dark levels are, they're not super awesome, you are going to miss the OLED for sure, but in terms of the colors and the quality of the display, it is really super nice, and having no screen door effect is, it's really, really sweet. So it's not an easy answer whether you should upgrade or, I mean, I'm going to keep mine for sure, because when I did try those contact lenses on and the Slim facepad and was really able to get it close to my face, then I thought, okay, this is really an increased field of view, and it felt much more immersive. But then again, you go down to some dark scenes in Half-Life Alyx, and yeah, you sort of get reminded how how nice it was to not have any glare, and yeah, and the colors or the dark levels on the Vive Pro with the Gear VR lens mod. So that's sort of where I'm at now. I'm definitely keeping this because I'm looking forward to getting some contact lenses and be able to enjoy the nice resolution and the super wide field of view. That really did feel quite amazing, even playing with some contact lenses in Half-Life Alyx, which wasn't ideal for my size. So, I mean, the resolution field of view is great. It's too bad that someone hasn't figured out how to beat the Fresnel lenses yet, except for the Gear VR modders. I can also explain a bit about that. I mean, you do get some barrel distortion. It's possible to correct for some of it. But generally, the Vive people are saying, I think they hosted some sort of AMA a couple of years ago and was asked to answer why didn't you use the Gear VR mod lens. And they said that it was because of this barrel distortion, and that some people would get sort of like the swimming pupils, or that people would get motion sick basically in their testing. It doesn't make sense to me. I see so many happy Gear VR modders out there, and I mean, they basically messed up the Vive Pro 2 big time with using this facepad, which doesn't even come close to utilizing the screen that they have there. So to be honest, I don't really think that they are addressing this very much. It doesn't seem like it. And whenever there comes a high resolution, high field of view head-mounted display that is choosing to use glass lenses, they can take my money right away. So yeah, I guess that's my testing of this. Of course, I should mention that browsing Reddit, browsing various forums, it does seem that it impacts your experience with the Vive Pro 2, whether or not you have sunken eyes, right? So how close can you get your eyes to the actual screen? For me, that's really not a problem. When I'm using the thin facepad, I can almost get my eyelashes really up close to the actual screen, so I can get a really wide field of view. But you might want to check that if you're considering an upgrade. If you have really sunken eyes instead of sort of protruding eyes, then it might not be the head-mounted display for you. Whereas the Index, it's really possible to get it far closer to your face, as I've understood it. So that's my 2 cents and my testing here. And yeah. Oh, I should also mention 120 Hertz. Of course, that's awesome. You really get a lot of less motion blur, but I mean, I don't have a computer, even with a 2080 Ti, that can run Half-Life Alyx or any other super great game. I mean, Beat Saber would probably not be a problem, but I'm not really playing it. But having the possibility to upgrade to 120 Hz when I do get a new graphics card one time, that is also a really big plus in the book for the Vive Pro 2. But it's not an easy answer. Unfortunately, both the Gear VR mod has its pros, and the Vive Pro 2 has its pros. So anyways, I hope that this was helpful for you in deciding whether or not to go for the Vive Pro 2 purchase. So thank you for watching, and if you would like to check out some of our other content, we are AltVR. We're creating alternative and experimental virtual reality applications, and also checking out everything that goes on within this domain. So yeah, definitely check out our channel if this is something that's interesting for you, and maybe I'll see you around. Thank you.